Hi, and welcome to You and the Law. I'm Steve Cilente.
And I'm Bob Lally.
We're looking to bring legal information to the members of the public, and we're going to try to do this twice a month, 2 different programs, to hopefully give you a little bit more information about you and the law. So what does this mean, actually? Well, every day, Bob, as you're aware, since you practice in the law as well, that there's not much that we do that doesn't involve a law somewhere.
No, there's something in everything we do. I mean, we get in the car, we drive down the street, we have to obey the traffic laws, voting. I could go on and on. Do you want me to talk about it?
No, it's just that I think everybody knows that no matter what we do in our lives, that there is some law somewhere that affects it. And what a lot of people don't know is, well, how does this process come about? We know that there's a United States Constitution, we know there's a California Constitution, and that the Congress and the legislature of California both are out there passing laws, but it doesn't necessarily stop there.
No, there's legislatures and Congress that pass laws, and not only that, but we have several agencies that have, like, fish and game that's the wardens come out when you go fishing or so forth, or Department of Motor Vehicles. They could change something that could affect you daily.
And that's where in California you take a look at California Code of Regulations, CCRs as referred to. A lot of the regulations we'll say enhance the laws or further guide it. People are enforcing the laws on what the laws are. But they are rules, they are laws, which could have negative consequences depending on what you're doing out there. But in the state of California, there are 29 different codes that are out there. And we can see behind us, even though these aren't real books, the actual codes of California probably would not fit on these bookshelves behind us. What, again, a lot of people don't understand is, well, how do you find these things?
Well, that's a good question, because, you know, I know you have a lot of people that come in and they say, you know, ask a question. And a lot of times, people have to understand that lawyers are just like ordinary people in some ways. We've gone through a long education process, and we could talk a little bit about that. But we don't know the answer to every question when you ask us. But we're trained where to look and where to find it. Now, we do know things that we deal with on a daily basis, pretty much. But even those change so much, we have to pretty much check them out on a daily basis before we can give an answer.
Right.
So it's where to look.
Correct. Now, within the context of this program, we may talk about laws and how they affect our individual lives, but it's impossible for us to say that this law particularly applies in this situation, because it's not necessarily true that we can point to a particular code that says this is what governs it. Often, and Bob and I both do criminal law, you may see that the penal code governs part of an area, but fish and game code governs it further. So it's difficult for us to say, go look here or there. Now, every county, for the most part, as far as I know, all 58 of them, have law libraries. And Amador has one that's located at the Central Library in downtown Jackson. There's one here in San Andres, which is underneath the courthouse, but you have to know where to get there. But today, with the access to the internet, what kind of things are out there?
Oh, what's out there? The world's out there. You know, a lot of times lawyers use Google and Yahoo to find out information, particularly when we're working on specific cases. But we also have unique services like Westlaw or Jury Search or FindLaw that gives us access. FindLaw is one that's actually open to the public. But we use those, instead of opening a book now, we just pull it up on our computer. And a lot of times we do that over at the courthouse. I think, you know, in the courtroom there's a paperback book we use once in a while, but most of it comes off the computer, and we use that.
Right. FindLaw is probably one that I refer to most often with people that want to look up the law, to go to findlaw.com. And it does have a section that's open to the public. There's also a portion for lawyers. But just reading the law sometimes isn't enough for us to make a decision. One of the problems we deal with in working with our various clients is that they'll say something happened. They'll go A, B, C, D, and what they don't understand is that they change D to E and forget the D, that all of a sudden you've changed the facts, and as one law professor used to tell me, you change the facts, I'll change my answer. So sometimes it's not as easy as just looking on the internet, reading the law, and say, well, this is what applies. Correct, Bob?
No, you have to know what the facts are. I mean, you have one little quirk, one little change in the facts, and it changes the whole picture. It may bring in a whole new applicable law or statute or regulation, or it may bring in a whole new case just by one little change in the facts.
Right. And you do a lot of tort law work.
Yes.
And that's particularly true there, correct?
Oh, yes. Yes, doing the tort law cases and liability issues and so forth, and the different types of liability issues, and what people's thinkings were and what their expectations were. All these facts come into play and how it happened. And dealing with certain types of cases, you have to really, really spend time with the client to know what the facts are. Because you don't want to get down the road and be working on something and find out 6 months into it that you really need to be going down another road.
Right. Now, what we anticipate is within the context of this program is try to respond to viewers' questions. By email, certainly they'll be sent through the public access television, where you state your question, we'll do our best to answer it. But again, keep in mind that we have to look at what you write. And again, changing one fact may change the outcome. I recall sitting in a particular case one time, and when something came out and I looked at my client and I said, why didn't you tell me this? And the response was, we didn't ask. Well, certainly that particular fact that I learned made a significant difference. But we'll do our best to answer your questions. Just send them to the public access television, and again, we'll do what we can do to answer your questions. Now, why can't a lawyer answer every legal question that's out there that a person might have?
Well, when a lawyer goes to law school, he doesn't really learn how to practice law. He does in a general sense. But it's more of they teach you how to think process. And when you come out of there, they have certain required courses, but it's like a little taste of each. And some of them you take in, like tax, and if you're not a tax specialist, then you might learn just enough to be dangerous. I mean, so what we have is, in California, we have certified specialists in many areas of the law. Now, that doesn't mean an attorney has to be certified to practice in that area, but he does have to be certified, as, or she, if they hold themselves out to be a certified expert in that area, such as criminal, workers' compensation, tax. There's about 7 or 8 of them, I think. I can't remember all of them. But a lot of attorneys, they will practice in a certain area over a long period of time. There's actually certified litigators, too. I found out about that. But if they practice in a certain area, whether they have the certificate, that's always a good thing. But if they practice, and I know a lot of really good lawyers that aren't certified but have been doing a certain area for years, but if somebody does, say, even within tort law, somebody comes in with an injured big toe case, Well, and that's, and you do auto accident cases. Now, a lot of litigators nowadays do different kinds of cases, but say you go to somebody that just does auto cases. Well, that person may want to send you to somebody that does a big tow case, because it's maybe a medical malpractice case, and there's all sorts of different issues in there that are completely different than an auto type case.
So what really happens in law school is it's a 3-year program, and if an attorney goes to night school, it's the same program, it just takes an extra year to complete it. What you're learning is the basics. As Bob said, you're learning to think. You're also learning where the resources are for you to do the research. And for instance, when we talk about learning how to think, you've got to learn to understand the historical basis for laws, particularly, for instance, in real property, in other words, the dirt that we live on. Those laws go back to the 1600s. They were actually studying Old English cases. Those cases led up to the current laws that we have today, dealing with, for instance, easements, whether or not somebody can put a fence up. Is there a tree that overhangs your yard? Is it your tree, their tree? Airplanes. Airplanes, of course, were not contemplated in the 16th century or 15th century. At any time until, needless to say, the Wright brothers flew. But now we have laws dealing with airplanes, and more recently, internet. There are internet laws, sports laws. Those are not things we learn in law school. We learn the historical aspect of the laws that led us to where we are today.
That's true. That's true.
It's a fair statement that most people coming right out of law school, there's no way that they can walk into a courtroom and suddenly say, I'm a lawyer, therefore I can practice.
No, it's always interesting to see a brand new lawyer out of law school that says, I'm up on everything because I just graduated from law school, because we go through a continuing education program that goes through years. You know, we've been doing this for years through the continuing education process. And not only that, most practicing lawyers are in court, or there are some that don't go to court, but they're dealing with it on a daily basis, so they have to keep up on it.
Now, I've got over 20 years of practice, and I know you do too.
Yes.
And certainly if we knew today, or excuse me, we knew at the beginning what we know today, we'd be entirely different lawyers at the outset. It's kind of almost a shocking situation to walk into a courtroom and realize you've never been there before and you really don't know what you're doing, because that is really not one of the things that they teach in law school. Certainly they've got moot court, and I know that a lot of the high schools are doing moot courts today that gives you some experience, but you're certainly not getting much of that education in law school.
No, excuse me, absolutely not, because when you go into a courtroom and you're a brand new lawyer, I mean, there are special places to sit. Whether you're representing the plaintiff or the defendant, you have to know which table you're supposed to sit at. You have to know the court and the judge, and because certain judges don't want you in certain areas of their courtroom. So.
Certainly that is correct. The general rule, just for those who didn't know, whoever the plaintiff is always sits closest to the jury box. Now that's assuming, of course, that the courtroom has a jury box. Some modern courtrooms, they have courts that are not made for the purpose of hearing any jury cases. So there won't be a jury box, and many times you'll see signs that says plaintiff or prosecution sits here, and that's where you sit. But traditionally, the person that starts the case, the petitioner or the plaintiff or the prosecutor, always sits close to the jury box. And that's pretty much well, as far as I know, that's a rule in every courtroom. I've never tried to look it up to see, but that's certainly is the custom and habit.
Right, and that's true, and I think that's important for the public to know, because there's a lot of people nowadays in certain type of cases that are representing themselves.
Right.
And that is very helpful for them to know where to sit and how to go about conduct in the courtroom.
So when we go to law school, most attorneys today that are practicing have been through 4 years of upper division. They have a bachelor's degree. It's not required in the state of California. Someone with basically a high school education can become a lawyer, but they have to go through a further testing process that I understand that the passage rate is about 20%.
I think it's called the baby bar.
Right, it is. But it's very difficult to pass the baby bar. And then at the end of the courses, the state bar puts on an examination for all California lawyers. Irrespective of what law school you went to, it's the very same bar exam. And in that bar exam, we see criminal law, tort law.
See everything. Sometimes I get the case in and I go, oh, this could be a bar examination. But it's a very varied exam. They've changed it over the years. Now I think there's some multi-choice, but the emphasis has always been on essays. And a lot of times there is no correct answer. It's how is a problem solved in the law?
I used to give the example that when you look at a bar exam, the question is, you walk into a room, there are 4 people sitting around a table, and the answer that they want is, what are they wearing? Of course, there's nothing in the facts. You either know the answer or you don't know the answer. But it's in 3 parts, going over a period of 3 days. The examination takes 3 very long days.
3 grueling days. You're very tired after this. You could sleep for 3 days afterwards, Steve.
I know of people that literally threw up in the middle of the examination. It was so tough. But for the most part, what we're seeing in today's law school, that's what you're going to see in the examination, covers criminal law, tort law, civil procedure, in other words, how are papers filed in the court and what rules apply, contract law. California has family law, where a lot of states don't. And also there's constitutional law. The specialty areas such as tax law, immigration law, those type of things are usually post law school education. Those are not areas that they typically teach.
Right, absolutely. There's actually advanced degrees in law schools. They're called LLMs. There's different degrees that lawyers can receive upon graduating out of law school, but past those degrees that really allow them to take the state bar exam, which the state bar recognizes, are degrees called LLMs. And they're usually in taxation or appellate work, and some have been specifically designed for law schools for very unique purposes, like internet law. I know there's been people with LLMs in international law. So it's that type of thing.
Right. So law school is the basics, and really after that is when you learn how to be a lawyer. I know that in my particular case, I had a lot of experience coming into law school because I was a law enforcement officer for a good number of years. So at least when I walked into a courtroom, I'd been there before. But that's not necessarily the case. But I was working at that time with the Sacramento District Attorney's Office, and that's really where I gained my lawyer courtroom experience. But not all lawyers necessarily go through that.
That's absolutely true. And I wasn't at the District Attorney's Office or a place, so I went over upon somebody's advice, a mentor's advice, and volunteered to get involved in trials. And I think within my first 10 days, I had a jury trial. And I had to do it within 10 days. And there's nothing like learning that way. And then you do more and more, and you get a little bit more comfortable after that. But you got to get in there and do them, and that's where we learn.
But you also had the added advantage, I think, of your father having been a judge.
He's the best mentor. I know you're a good mentor too, Steve. But yes, he was a very good person to practice with.
I know I practiced in front of him when I was in Sacramento.
Thank you.
It is definitely, working for a public agency was a great place for me to get a lot of experience. I did a lot of trials. My record was 15 trials in 5 months. That is way too much, but the courtrooms down there are different, and they were all DUI or simpler cases that had to go to trial, and somebody had to do them.
Can I say something about the civil law here? It's really interesting that Steve brings that up about a lot of trials, because I do a lot of criminal work with Steve now. Now, in civil law, you don't go to court as often. More of the cases are settled out of court because it's so expensive to litigate the civil cases. I have actually had to put up front and pay experts $600 an hour just to consult. That's before we took the first deposition or sent out the first interrogatory. I'm sorry, I just wanted, but
Yeah.
Because of the expense of it, so many civil cases, the emphasis is on early resolution, but in the criminal law, it's a little different.
It is a lot different. The rules that apply in a civil context do not always apply to criminal law. For instance, in civil law, you'll see a lot of depositions. A deposition is where you're in a room with a court reporter, the lawyers. There's no judge there. There's no jury. They are open to the public. And whatever you say is under oath. And what you say, it better be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, because you may come back and end up eating those words at a later point. In criminal law, there is only one provision for a deposition. Beyond that, depositions are not appropriate in criminal law. If a person is ill to the point they're probably not going to survive, in other words, live long enough to testify, you can do what's called a conditional examination in criminal law, but that's the only time that there's a deposition that I'm aware of in the criminal law field.
Interesting. Interesting.
So, and most lawyers may not even know that unless they ran across a situation where that could come up. You talked about certified specialists in certain areas of the law, and certainly there are certified specialists in some of the, I'll call them the techie areas of law, but also family law and criminal law. So, what does it take to be a specialist? A lot more education. Both Bob and I, as well as every lawyer in this state, excepting some government lawyers, are required to go through additional education every year. And every fourth year, I think it is, I lose track, we have to show the state, or at least acknowledge to the state, that we have done the special education. In other words, learning that the laws have changed, and go to these classes and report that we've done these. But when you go beyond that, you take more classes, demonstrate that you've handled various types of cases, you can become a certified specialist. Criminal law, family law, bankruptcy, different areas of law. And for a lot of reasons, a lot of lawyers don't do that. And although I've practiced in family law and criminal law, that's never been something that I've ever sought. Not only does it hold you to a higher standard, it also changes malpractice insurance. It costs you more to be a lawyer. There are a lot of different reasons why people don't do that.
One of the things also that you found, this is actually a point that Steve made to me, and it's really quite true, is that in our more rural counties, such as Amador or Calaveras County, you're going to find lawyers do more of a variety of things. Unless they really don't do that, then they'll refer it or they'll send it over to somebody they know, or they'll bring somebody on board to help them with it. But up in the rural areas, the lawyer is more of a general practitioner, or at least tries to be of assistance to people.
That's true. Certainly in Amador and Calaveras counties, you look in the the yellow pages, and you'll see lawyers certainly in a general listing, but you may see them also in family law, criminal law, perhaps doing property issues or probate. And rural lawyers do tend to practice in more areas of law. As one lawyer told me, he was quite old, he says, I practiced whatever kind of law my client had an issue with. But those were the old days. We really can't do that anymore. But when you're talking about a specialist, usually they practice in one area and one area alone. But also, it has a very significant meaning in the law. I cannot advertise as a specialist. I specialize in a particular area because there is a particular specialist under the California State Bar rules. So I cannot use that term. I can say doing exclusively or limited to, but I can't use the word specializes or specialist.
Right, you can refer that you do that type of law, but you just can't say, I'm a certified specialist in it.
So if somebody's out there and they're looking for a lawyer, where do they go? What are their resources?
Word of mouth. I think word of mouth is the best way to go. And ask your friends, your neighbors, people who've represented, particularly in the small communities, people have reputations up here. And our reputations, are what we live by. So, and of course somebody gets reason. One of the things is be very comfortable with the person you're working with. You want to have a good working relationship.
Right. Well, first you got to get there to be able to meet with the lawyer. So first you got to find them. In today's world, certainly we all know about going to the yellow book, yellow pages, whatever names that they're giving them today. But if you look at it, sometimes in the books, sometimes it's pretty scary. You see full page ads, half page ads, general listings where you just have a list of names. But sometimes you'll see it broken into category, whether it's DUI, felonies, divorces, which is a dissolution technically in California. You may say probate, estate planning, all kinds of different categories, and you may not know where your issue falls. Amador County, the Bar Association there, has their website. Calaveras either has or is working on, I don't remember at this point. The internet, lawyers.com, their AT&T or Yellow Pages, YP.com. You can look under lawyers for your area, or just, let's say you want a divorce. Just put in on internet search, Divorce California, Amador, Calaveras, whichever, and somebody's name is going to pop up somewhere.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Generally speaking, it might be somebody you know in the community.
That's true. One thing to keep in mind when looking for a lawyer is that I believe it's attributable to Abraham Lincoln. A man who represents himself has a fool for a client. You think about that, there's a lot to that. A lot of times it is worth spending the money, or perhaps there's no charge in doing a consultation. You really should talk to a lawyer. It may be worth the $50 or $100 to go talk to him.
And I also want to bring up there's different kinds of contracts, and I think that may be a subject for another show, but there's all kinds of contingency contracts, flat fee. I think that's for another thing, but there's different ways. And just because you don't have any money in a certain type of case doesn't mean you won't be able to hire a lawyer.
That's correct. Another place to look, if you found a lawyer's name, you want to find out about the lawyer, you may want to go to calbar.ca.gov. calbar.ca.gov. That's the California Bar's website. You can put in somebody's name. It tells you where they went to law school, when they graduated, how long they've been in practice, and also whether or not they've been disciplined under the state bar. There are a lot of resources.
There's also a lot of public resources there too, as well, and it'd be interesting for the public just to go there and take a look and have a look and learn a little bit about it.
And as you said, when they finally do meet with a lawyer, they've got to be comfortable with that lawyer. And is the lawyer patient with them, gives them the time to listen to their problem, and explains things thoroughly to them?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Steve. I think we've covered a lot of things in this show today, but you need to be comfortable with the person you're working with. Just like if you're going to a doctor or any other professional or any type of person or a contract, you need to be comfortable and have that good working relationship.
I agree. There's a lot of information on the California Bar website about attorney retainers and other information. It's a good resource to go. We want to again thank you for being with us today, and also don't forget to email your questions to the Public Access Television, and we look forward to answering your questions and hopefully give you a better understanding about you and the law.